So, we're going to jump in this month to first talk about the top three things. If you live in USDA growing zones 3 through 8, those are those colder, colder climate, temperate climate growing zones. What should you or could you be doing this month in the garden? Now, if you've been following along earlier this month and have been reading through the gardening calendar that's free on the website, you're probably already going on that. I'm, working through my list a little bit. You know how it is. You get people coming and going, family stuff that comes up. And honestly, gardening sometimes takes a little bit of a side seat. I was talking to my parents the other day. They're up on our family homestead up in Michigan. And they're finally unthawing. They're hopefully, knock on wood, done with the freezes. Memorial Day is a little bit earlier this year, so they are outside in the garden, in the food forest. They're working on the fruit trees. So if you're in those temperate climate growing zones, there's three things that I would be doing if I still lived in Kansas City, Missouri, this month in particular. So if you can't get to anything else, don't worry about it. These are three things that you can hopefully really easily do. So the first thing in zones 3 through 8, I would be looking at making sure everything is mulched. So refreshing your mulch, your straw, your wood chips, that sort of thing, in the garden, in the food forest, around the orchard, even in the animal pens, making sure those are fresh and ready to go coming into the wetter spring rainy season. Now, there is a little bit of nuance when it comes to what type of straw or what type of mulch to use. So a general rule of thumb is if you're looking at a soft stemmed plant, use a soft stem mulch. If you're looking at a hard stem plant, think about a hard stem mulch. So for example, in the garden, most of those are soft stems. So we're going to use a soft stem mulch like straw, grass clippings, chopped up leaves. The reason why we want to do that is when those softer stemmed like grasses decompose, it creates a bacterially dominated soil structure, which is what most vegetables prefer. So that's why we're not using necessarily wood chips in there. We want to save those for the food forest. So the benefit of those wood chip mulch, when that is decomposing, it's creating a fungally dominated soil structure, which the fruit trees prefer. So if you've got a soft stem plant, use a soft stem mulch, say that 10 times fast. If you have a hard stemmed plant, use a hard stemmed mulch. The second thing that I would be focusing on if was still living in Kansas City is spring deworming of cattle, poultry, other livestock. Now, you can go at it from the traditional route using things like ivermectin, which is a great course of action. I personally use Joel Salatin's method of deworming. So I use a product called Basic H, and I have a full video on how to deworm the cattle and that sort of thing on YouTube, so you can check that out. But this is a great time of year to deworm coming into spring in the cooler climates because you're about to get very wet, which is where bacteria thrives. Those parasites, the worms are going to thrive in that environment. A lot of times early on in the spring, it's very dry before rainy season hits, which stresses the animal's body. So when their body is stressed and then you automatically and very quickly introduce that wetter environment, that's where disease thrives. So the deworming of your cattle, poultry, livestock is incredibly important this time of year. And I always follow up after any type of deworming program the next week or 2 weeks later with reintroducing good, healthy biology back into the animals. So I use the SCD probiotics bio livestock. There's a link for that on the website that you can check out because it has a lot of different types of probiotics that are all grown together in one mother culture. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, and then you're repopulating the gut's microbiome to be able to have healthier livestock throughout the rest of the season. The third thing that I would be doing in USDA zones 3 through 8 is this is kind of the last end of your window of like your major annual planting, cover crops, food plots if you're doing deer and that sort of thing. You don't have to freak out about it right now. I would say get it done by the end of the month. You know what I mean? So time it based on rains. I really like to let rain be in the forecast for a day or two, or have yourself and your hoses and drip lines available to help them get over the transplant shock. But if you don't get them in by the end of May, then you're pressing having enough time to really have a really good, bountiful harvest before that cold weather comes back. And I know that's super triggering to talk about snow coming back, but I'm trying to get it in for you so you have a really good, really successful growing season. So again, those three things for USDA zones 3 through 8: refreshing your mulch, spring deworming of cattle, poultry, and livestock, and then number 3, your annual planting and cover crop planting, hopefully by the end of the month.